What's up, y'all? We back again. Another episode of Fight Court. I'm your boy, Dean Thomas, alongside my man, my riding partner, Brian Quinn. But today, we are joined by a very special guest, victorious over the weekend in Mexico City. I ran into this young man. I'm going to let him tell the story because I ran into him outside the little UFC breakfast spot. But first, let me introduce him. Marquel Mederos, all the way live from Arizona. What's popping, homie?
Man, what's going on? Hey, D, you know I gotta hold it down for the light skin.
You did, man. I gotta get into all this, man. But first, man, tell us how you accosted me outside the little breakfast spot in Mexico City.
Man, I probably hadn't saw Dean I think it's probably since that actual time. So I saw Dean at the Apex when I was fighting on the regional scene. I might have been, I don't know, maybe like 4-1 at the time, or maybe like 5-1, somewhere out there. And I told him, I was like, "Hey, man, keep a lookout. Like, I'll be here on the contender series next year." It was towards the end of that year's contender series, and I think I was cornering one of my teammates. He was like, "Oh man," I'm pretty sure he probably gets that from a lot of dudes. So he's like, "Oh yeah, man, for sure, I'll be looking out." He just keeps it real cordial. He was like, "Yeah, whatever." I ended up almost 2 weeks from that date that I had saw him, ended up being on contender series on that last week in contender series and knocking out a dude and getting the contract.
Man, I'll tell you what, man, and you're right. I get that all the time, but when it happens, it makes me happy, man. It really does. It really does make me happy when I see you guys make it, man. And you come from a good team too, man. I mean, you know, I've always been a fan of those guys down at the lab. So, tell me about this weekend, man. The fight for you itself, getting the dub, and how that felt.
Getting the dub always feels good, right? I mean, some are better than others, but I mean, you can't beat a W. I think that fight was a lot closer than I wanted it to be, but in hindsight, like it's a lot of lessons to take from that. I broke my cheekbone like 6 weeks ago, so I did no sparring for the camp. Actually, it was my cheekbone and my nose, so I did no sparring. I literally did all mitt work. Mitts with me and one of my coaches, Randy. I did strength and conditioning, a little bit of wrestling, and but no live rounds that whole camp. So that was my first live go in almost 2 months.
Damn.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, especially for that, the only thing that was different was obviously the cardio, but my cardio didn't feel bad. I just hadn't done a lot of that stuff. So once we got into those grappling exchanges, I was like, "Oh shit, I'm feeling it a little bit."
Yeah, I've known that I had camps where I had something similar happen, and I felt pretty good when I went in there when I hadn't been sparring for a month. I mean, I know like it has its give and takes, but you know, like your experience, like how did it feel? Did you feel a little somewhat? Well, you're coming off an injury too. Did you feel like somewhat looser, fresh, or you're like, wow, I really missed those live rounds?
No, actually, I mean to be frank, I mean I can't say I didn't feel sharp because that first round was my best round out of the whole fight, right? Yeah. I think I maybe got touched like once or twice that whole round, and I landed like I think strike count was like 25 or 24 to like 2 or something. So I felt good that first round. Like I said, it wasn't that. It was those grappling exchanges, the cardio of it, because I mean, especially if you fought before, if you can do one thing the whole time, it's fine. Like if you're wrestling the whole time, it's fine. If you're striking the whole time, it's fine. But once you get that up down going and you haven't done that for a minute, boy, that's a whole nother ball game.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dean.
Oh, all right. Yeah, man. So I think what it was, man, for him, and I feel what you're saying. Like it was a lot closer than you wanted it to be. But I think he kind of, because he kind of leaned on his experience, man. I think he knew his assignment and he knew he was down, and knowing that he had to wrestle like that. I mean, did that start to make you nervous a little bit? Like when he started really trying to put that wrestling pressure on you?
Nah, I don't think it necessarily made me nervous. I don't think it made me nervous at all. I was just like, okay. I mean, I know we're gonna do now. I remember sitting down. I can't remember if it was after the first round, And then Crouch and Benson, I think Crouch at the end of the round, John Crouch, he was like, "You know what he's gonna do now, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's gonna wrestle." And so it was an expectation that he was gonna wrestle. And that didn't put any kind of fear in me or whatever. It was just like, okay, cool, we got to wrestle now.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's part of the game. If I'm like, oh, we gonna wrestle now, that means I'm not prepared, or I'm not doing what the hell I need to do outside of the ring, right? If I'm going in there like, oh, we got to wrestle now, like that means you're not showing up to the job prepared.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm put you on a little game here about my man Ryan Quinn, because I know you would like if you fought Ryan. Didn't you have the longest winning streak in welterweight history in Bellator?
Damn.
Yeah.
Or lightweight or
Bellator,
something. Like
well, it was overall. It was welterweight, lightweight until I lost. Yeah. So all I did was a wrestle. I think I threw 3 punches during that entire.
He said I was up there smothering dudes.
All right, so on a more fun thing, man, because you said you was repping for the light skinned dudes. Don't think I didn't peep. I don't know what you are, man. I don't know what you are. But your last name is Mederos. You look like Eric Anders, but and then when you got on the mic, you said something in Spanish, and I said, "My man is Puerto Rican." What are you, dog? I gotta know.
Man, so my mom's family is from Trinidad.
Okay.
But my dad is half Irish, half Spanish. So it's a mix of them three.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to tune into the post fight when they put, and the translator was there, and I was like, oh, it's Mexico, whatever. And then you spoke perfect English, and I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting with Mederos, I was expecting something else completely.
Yeah, when people see me like on the outlet, they probably think I'm like Puerto Rican or Dominican or something. But yeah, man,
that's what I thought you was gonna say. I thought you were gonna say my mother Puerto Rican, my father black. That's what I thought you was gonna say.
I had one guy tell me, because my name's Ryan Quinn. They're like, hey, this was before, I was amateur, and it was a lot, like, it was only like so many videos. One guy actually told me, he goes, hey, I was watching the blonde haired guy the first time through, and then I heard your hand get raised. Like, oh fuck, I was watching the wrong guy the whole time.
Oh, because he thought the blonde dude was Quinn.
Yeah.
Nah, man, I would use it and take advantage of it, because I don't think we have any Puerto Rican or Dominican fighters, but I mean, I would use it if I had it.
Where'd you grow up, homie?
I grew up in Dallas.
So you're from Dallas? Like, and I think you told me that. I think you did tell me that in the thing. Now that I'm remembering. So you grew up in Dallas, and then you moved out and you started fighting, and then you went to train with the lab, right?
Yeah. So I was man, it's a crazy story how I ended up getting into fighting, but once stuff happened, I got caught up selling drugs. Mom kicked me out the house, and then I moved to Colorado with my dad. He actually got me a ticket. I was getting into some trouble, and then he was doing like jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff.
Your pop?
Yeah, my pops. He was doing like a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff in Colorado, and he just always loved fighting. I remember my first like actual fight I saw was Weidman versus Silva. That was the very first fight I saw, and I was like, for some reason, like, and I went back and watched all of Anderson's old fights, like when he fought Chris Lieben, when he fought all, you know what I mean, Forrest, Rich Franklin a couple times. And I was like, damn, I could probably do this. I got in a couple of street fights when I was younger, so I thought I could do something. And I got like smothered going to my first jiu-jitsu class. The coach or professor, he comes in, and my dad's like, yeah, this is my son, he's probably bringing off to the side, like, hey, rough him up a little bit. That's it. So I come into the room, I'm like using all the strength I can. He just mounts me and just, smothers me, holds my face in the gi. And then and I was like, yeah, man, if one dude could hold you, two could rape you, so I got to do this.
Yeah. Hey, facts. Facts.
I got a similar story. So I was wrestling in college, and then I was like, let me see. Like, Matt Hughes just beat Hoist Gracie, so I'm like, let me do this shit. Let me get jiu-jitsu. I show up, I'm in pretty good shape, and this beanpole 46-year-old man submits me 3 times in 5 minutes with an armbar. I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, I can't let this happen anymore. And then I ended up loving jiu-jitsu. But yeah, it's funny when you get in there the first time.
Yeah, that first ass beating is definitely humbling. Like you look at the world in a different perspective. That's the thing too. A lot of these people, especially on the outside, they think they can fight, but they have not a. I always say the world will be a better place if everybody got punched in the face once.
I agree. I think fist fighting should be legal to a certain extent.
But dudes don't even solve like arguments with fights anymore. Everybody want to shoot now.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
The world will be a better place like Friday.
You get in the street, you in the streets and you bump into somebody, they used to look at that cauliflower, that gun coming out real fast.
I know. Facts, man. That is true.
You're going to turn around, it's going to be just a magically appearing in their hands. So, I do think that'll solve a lot of issues for sure.
You're a little young, but did you see the movie Friday?
Yeah, of course.
All right, man, so the dad holds, you win some, you lose some, you live to fight another day. It's like, yeah, people should just fight, take an ass whooping, and move on. Like that.
Ryan, I don't know if you noticed that the Friday is
them dirty with that brick.
Yeah, Friday is mandatory in a black household.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
no, I didn't.
You didn't see that? That's like some kids grow up watching Teletubbies. Some kids grow up watching Power Rangers. Black kids grow up watching Friday.
Yep.
Hey, Friday in the wood. The wood is
the wood. Yep. So Marquel, man, who do you want to fight, man? I mean, it's you coming up, man, and the way to do it to really excel and propel yourself forward is you need that matchup. A matchup that's going to make you look good, but then one that you also going to get past the dude and be like, okay, he's the next dude. Who is that matchup for you?
I don't know. I saw Rong Zhu looking at my Instagram the other night after I won that fight, and I know he just got to win. So, I mean, if you want to look at the Instagram, we could see each other in person. So I guess we could run that. I feel like if you're already looking, you're looking for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You feel some type of way. Nobody just does it just to do it. So he was looking at my Instagram the other night. He can get some work.
I love that. Yo, let's put this out there. And we're gonna put this out there and see if Ronju take the bait.
Yeah, let's talk into fruition.
We'll see.
Quinn, you got anything else for my man before we let him go?
I love the way you handled the post fight after when you were backstage and you said, well, I was gonna call out Jared Gordon, but I gotta get my ass back training. There's some stuff I gotta work on. We know that you had an injury. What are some things that you plan on working on for the next thing?
If you watch this last fight, you definitely would try to take me down, right? Like if I'm watching that last fight and I'm outside of me, I'm definitely trying to take Marquel down. So wrestling for sure. My striking has always been my go-to. And even if it's not a guy who wants to wrestle, they tend to want to wrestle after a round. So wrestling and jiu-jitsu is gonna be my biggest thing for the next couple of months. And then I mean, the game overall, it's even though I'm a striker, there's not one part of the game that anybody's ever perfected. Because even when you perfect it, there's so many eyes on you watching that's why a champion can never be a champion 100% of the time because you're under that spotlight. And once you think you're good, everybody's adjusting to your game while you think you're good, and then you lose your spot. So obviously the whole game, but if I'm being frank, my wrestling and jiu-jitsu.
Cool.
I love it, my man. Well, Marquel, man, we're gonna let you go. Appreciate you coming on the show, man. I look forward to watching you do your thing in your career, man. I love your squad, and hope to see you on the flip soon enough.
Okay, of course. I got to go get a knockout, and we come back and do another interview.
Hey, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Anytime.
All right,
I made you the promise of getting on Contender Series. Now I got to make you the promise my next fight, so I'm knocking somebody out.
Man, I love it. I love it. Please make me proud.
Make me proud, my man. Right there. That's right there.
There we go. We'll do it again. All right, fellas.
All right, man. Peace out.
Man, you know what I love what he said? He said he trained with the Guion, and he didn't say I need to work my ground, I need to work jiu-jitsu. And that's great. So I love with fighters like that. First of all, I love seeing an MMA fighter willing to putting the gi on. And if I ever saw one of my fighters, I'd be like, I'm so happy you put that on. Now take it off for like 3-4 months because it's like I love the mentality that they're humble enough to go into that. Like it's uncomfortable with the gi if you're not used to it, But at the end of the day, we know gi jiu-jitsu is not good training for mixed martial arts. But I like where his head's at, where he's willing to put himself in uncomfortable situations, and he's going to grow for sure.
Yeah, he's got a confidence about him and a willingness to share himself with others.
Yeah,
which is very necessary to be good at this. Because and the reason why when we see boring fights or guys not pulling the trigger, they're not fully willing to share themselves with us. This is what they're holding on and stalling and not willing to be vulnerable. And I noticed that when I met him this second time around, when he came up to me, was like, "Hey man, I remember that time I told you this. Now look at me." And like just how bold he was and how confident he was. And then just hearing him talk now, like I feel like he's going to be really good. He's going to have a good career. And he's got a great team behind him, man. Those guys at the lab with John Crouch and them smaller weights, they're really doing a lot of good things.
There's someone making a statement on every card from the lab. It's every week. There's somebody else on the way up.
And you got to attribute that to two things, I think. Obviously, when you got a bunch of good guys in a room and they're cool with each other, like they have to be willing to help each other, and it looks that way. And that comes to this, and that brings me to my second thing, and that is John Crouch. They're probably willing to help each other and all cool with each other because of the culture that John Crouch built. So
you said the C word. I love it, man. It's so true.
Yeah,
culture.
Because a lot of places don't have it, or they have a bad culture.
Yeah. I've been on both sides of that. You've seen. You've been on both sides of that.
Yeah, I've been on. Yeah, I know what it looks like. And more often than not, I think most places have a bad. Some worse than others, but I think just in general, we tend to over generalize how good jiu-jitsu is supposed to be, and it ends up not being that. It's always a bad culture half the time.
Yeah,
more often than not, some part of the jiu-jitsu experience is a bad culture. But with that being said, when you find a good culture, nothing beats it.
Team culture is real. Like I think that team culture and team chemistry is two different things. They're saying in analytics that team chemistry is bullshit, like in other sports. I don't know if that's true or not, but team culture is definitely real. Like, as I always make references to other sports, like the Yankees, the 98 Yankees were the best team ever to play baseball. They didn't have one player starting in the All-Star game. They didn't have one player with 30 home runs. They just had a win mentality, and they had a good team culture, and that they all went out and knew they were doing their job to do the ultimate job and win. And like you said, with other teams, like we've seen, how many times have we seen small teams? You get these huge teams with whatever culture, then you get these small, narrowed down teams with a great culture, and they're just really family oriented, where they really crush it. Like back in the day, Greg Jackson's teams, you know, when with Keith Jardine and Rashad Evans and that crew, like that had good culture. That was a hot little team.
They seem like they had good culture. You know what's crazy about like these teams that have good culture is that it always comes down to one motherfucker got in the team and then turned the culture out, and the next thing you know, the team breaks up.
Yeah, one bad apple.
It's always like one dude, but you can't really pinpoint who that dude is. Just somehow on the inside, one dude is jealous of somebody else, and then he starts to create tension in all these different areas. Next thing you know, you got a shitty team.
Yeah,
or at least a shitty culture anyway.
Yeah. I know more than this coach. This guy saying that. You don't need that bullshit.
Yeah. So what'd you think of UFC Mexico?
I thought it was all right. It was just all right though. Like it was I thought Moreno was gonna do his thing. He did what he did. I mean, I wasn't really blown away by anything. Love Mederos. What else did I see there? Can't really think now. What about you? What'd you think of it?
Well, I was, man, what a weekend that was. You know, I come from London, get home, for a couple of days, and head right back out to Mexico City. Mm-hmm. And to me, Mexico City is a more difficult trip because of what I'm about to tell you. You just have to be very careful, more so than other places. Mm-hmm. So I was out there exclusively for Joe Pyfer. Wasn't doing a TV role, wasn't doing anything, just exclusively to coach Joe Pyfer. He ended up getting really sick and not fighting. So that kind of not really ruined my experience, but it by the time the fights came around, I was like, I'm ready to go home. Like I'm only here for this. This ain't happening. Now I'm ready to go home. So I just at that point I was like kind of done with it, but I still ended up watching the fights, and a couple of things stood out to me. Lazy Boy has got to be the dumbest. No, he just, man, he fights so reckless, man, and he got beat, and it sucks because like he had the walkout with Julio Cesar Chavez. He's got 2 million followers on Instagram, like everybody loves him. And then he goes out there and just gets beat by a more disciplined fighter, and that's kind of sad to see because like he didn't get beat because like the guy was just that much better, perhaps, but he got beat because he was just lacks direction when he fights, and when you got the hardest thing in fighting is to get 2 million followers. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the hardest thing, is to have people connect with you. And when people connect with you, if you're not going to be a blood and guts Gaethje fighter, which I don't know if he is, but didn't seem like it 100%. But if you're not going to be that, you have a responsibility to your fans to fight well and try to win. And it just didn't look like he did that. So
because then your brand is a house of cards. It'll
yeah, for sure.
Rosas Jr. That fight. I keep forgetting how young he is, and I don't even want to criticize him because of it. But I just I find where he finds himself in these 50-50 scramble grapple situations, or even wrestling, and he's improving. I don't want to say that. He's using his boxing to set up takedowns now. He did try to take one shot from a little too far away, but it's like, oh, I got to get that rear naked choke. Instead of, maybe pivot and just land in a safe position, as opposed to having my hip on the ground or something along those lines, or his back. He's too high when he's riding. Was a little surprised to see that. It's nothing that can't be fixed. It's nothing that won't be fixed. We just haven't seen, and he's got a high ceiling. We're not even close to it yet, is what it is. I just hope, like we said when he first got signed with the UFC, I hope that his body doesn't break down before he reaches that ceiling.
Yeah, I think especially because he's so young right now, like you said, he's got a long way to go before, in my mind, he is champion-like material.
Yeah.
And not to say that he's not talented now, and he's because he's good and he's talented, and he's going to beat those guys outside of the top 15. He's going to beat them and maybe even look kind of good doing it because he's talented. But once he gets somebody who can who's also has the skill, he's gonna run into a lot of problems. But it's still an unfair assessment because he is so young. Yeah. So it's hard. So if I'm the UFC, it's like, damn, now we have a major problem on our hands. We got a guy who's not probably as good as we want him to be, but he's still pretty good. But how do we match him up without killing his career? I think they kind of have a problem now with him.
Well, I'm happy that I don't think they have a problem yet. I think that we can revisit that by the end of the year, but I don't think they have a problem yet. When Paddy Pimblett was in his shoes, plus Paddy's a little bit older, people wanted to see this kid against a top 15 opponent. And I think fans kind of recognize where Shuiwi is with his career, where he's which is the best thing in MMA right now, by the way. I'm all about it.
I think he sold me on it too after about a year of hearing that. I think I'm sold on it.
And I think it's not even the fact that he's saying it's just, oh, that's just nothing, just something me and my friends made up. And it's like, oh, sold.
He had the whole crowd going, chee wee wee.
Yeah. But I don't see fans calling for blood, get this dude a top 15. I think they recognize it. I would like to see him a little bit more secure with his wins and his finishes, a little more dominant, but it's not like he hasn't been dominant. He gets his finishes. I think with him, he probably needs to wrestle a little bit more so he could recognize those positions where he's going to break his base if he's on top, and keep boxing so he can mix up those takedowns, which he has been doing, and a little bit of cage work. But he's got a long time ahead of him. Hopefully they don't. I mean, I'm happy that they're not making him fight every 3 or 4 months, although that time will come where he's got to stay a little bit more active. But hopefully he makes those improvements and we could start seeing him. We'll either say by December of 2025, I'm either going to say, you know what, Dean, you're right. They have a problem with him, or we're going to be saying he needs to fight a top 12 maybe by that point.
Yeah, Well, but that's the thing, man. Like because he's so popular, and if you just start matching him recklessly, he's going to lose, right? Like, and maybe even bad. Like, because when Christian beat him, it wasn't bad. Christian just had him on the run, and he ran out of options. But like some of these guys are going to beat him bad.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. Some of these guys,
you know what it is. It's almost better if he fights a top 15 and he gets knocked out in 30 seconds. That would be better if he fights a top 15, goes a distance, and just looks completely sloppy and gets beat up.
Yeah,
because they're like, what the fuck is this kid doing?
But that's the thing, though. But like a kid like that, man, if he gets knocked out, that might ruin his confidence.
Yeah, true.
For good. That's my point. Is it's hard because if he goes through some traumatic experiences at this age, like these younger guys don't really come back from that.
Yep. So
like his losses are going to have to be kind of like when Christian Rodriguez beat him, or even like when Peyton Talbot lost. Like he was still fighting tough, but he was just outmatched, and we saw that. And that's not that bad as like getting beat up and embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm afraid for Raul Rosas Jr. is if he gets beat up and embarrassed, he may not be able to bounce back from that. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen to him.
Agreed.
So your boy is fighting this weekend, though.
Oh yeah, Lerone Murphy. You already know.
It's so crazy to me when I look at you.
You don't see me as Lerone Murphy fan?
No. Like when you look at both of us, and who's the Lerone Murphy fan?
Choose wisely.
It's okay. I've never seen you talk about any fighter the way you talk about Lerone Murphy.
I really got a thing for the guy, huh?
Yeah, why?
Dude, I'm impressed with his growth. He's athletic. I just love to see how he's chaining things together. I think I forgot which fight it was. It was 3 fights ago, and I was like, "There's no way this kid's winning this fight. Like he's just not there." And he looked marvelous. I really love it when fighters could really mix martial arts together, and he's doing that. I'm like I always say, people do boxing then wrestling. He's doing boxing and wrestling, like things like that. I just think it's so impressive how he's developing his wrestling, his level changes, his striking. He's in shape. I'm pretty confident he's going to win this weekend too. I think that Josh Emmett, serious power, no question. But I think that Lerone could jab and then shoot underneath that power and ride him out.
Well, I got news for you. I did a breakdown for my man Andreas Hale, who writes for ESPN. And I said the same thing, man. I said Lerone Murphy is going to win 49-46. Mm-hmm. He's going to stunt on Josh at times. He's going to be too fast for him. He's going to use his movement well and his variety of offense. And I think Josh is, especially too, man, 40 years old, right?
At that weight class, cutting that weight.
Yeah, at this weight, 40 years old. And he took a little time off after the Bryce fight, but it wasn't because he was like trying to clear his head. Like he had surgery on his hip. Oof. I'm like, yo, but in his mind, he's going, man, this is the best I've ever felt. This is from what I heard. He was telling everybody he hasn't felt this good going into a fight in a long time because he was always injured in the other fights, and this time off, he healed his injuries, got the surgery, all this, that, and the third. But I'm like, I get what you're trying to say, but that's not really how it works.
Yeah, it's really
like you want it to work like that, but that's not really how it works.
Especially, he's going against someone who's going to test the mobility on that hip.
Yeah, right. Like exactly. Like he's going up against one of the faster guys in the division. And this wasn't a surgery you had when you were 21 and you're coming back at 24, right? You're 40. Like, whew, I don't know. And Josh Emmett's a really nice guy, but I just think that there's just too many obstacles in the way for him to win this.
Yeah, I team Lerone all the way.
Yeah, I did say that the biggest X factor in the fight was the cage size, because that favors Emmett tremendously in cornering Lerone, but I just still think he's going to still be too slow. I think he's still going to get beat to the punch, but the cage size could be a factor, though.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you on that one because, I mean, Emmett comes forward well. Yeah, he does lateral footwork well. So, but is Lerone really? I think he's too fast to be painted into a corner, and even then, I think that if they get into a clinch up against the cage, which I'm sure Emmett won't allow or won't look for, I think that the pummel game goes to Lerone. I just think that too much is in his favor. But that's the one fight that I was really focused on this card this weekend. It's not a bad card either. There's a couple of good ones on the main. Let me pull it up right now. It's not coming up.
Yeah, what else is on this card? I know Pat Sabatini and Joe Anderson Brito.
Let's see.
That guy can crack.
Fight card. Freaking Google.
You pulling it up on Google?
The UFC is not coming up for some reason. Here we go. Oh yeah, Martin Buday versus Kennedy. I never know how to pronounce his last name. Shit, you're gonna make me do it. Nesruku.
I have no idea. Hold on, Martin Buday. He's a heavyweight.
Kennedy, yeah, Martin Buday.
You're excited about heavyweights?
No, I'm not excited. I think that might be a good fight.
Oh,
Brad Tavares versus Gerald Meerschaert. I would have been looking forward to that fight a few years ago.
Okay,
but
I mean, from a name value and like from I'm friends with these guys. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I think they're fun fights. I don't think it's anything that's going to move the needle in the rankings or but I think they're fun fights.
No, it's perfect for the Apex.
Yeah. I really, the Apex is dwindling. I've been a staunch defender of the Apex fights. I love the Apex fights, but they've been a little thrown together of late. But this one's good. This one's keeping people busy.
No, I mean you're right about that. They've been kind of thrown together as of late, but when you think about it, you have to.
Yeah, you absolutely have to.
Yeah, you have. You can't like. We might look at those fights and complain, but man, do you want to see them fights in a small city? I mean, in a remote city somewhere. Like you're not going to be able to put these fight cards, some of those fights, anywhere other than the Apex.
Yeah, and I know that the fighters complain and stuff like that, but this allows activity having these fights if you're not even being a fan of the fight game, if you're a fan of the fighters, this allows them to have activity, make money. It actually does push the sport along. I mean, if there's no Apex, do you think that, well, this is a horrible analogy now, but do you think that the gap between the UFC and the PFL, do you think if there's no Apex, it's a little bit closer? I think the fact that we get UFC every weekend, like it keeps anything away, any other competition away.
No. I mean, I see where you're going with that, and I can appreciate the effort, but there's just there's no competition in terms of the PFL. You know what I'm saying? Like regardless of the Apex or not, like the UFC's machine is just light years ahead of like when Dana said that he wasn't competing against these other organizations, he's competing with football and basketball and all that stuff. Like, yeah, he's right about that.
He's right about that.
He's right. I mean, it's not even. I mean, the UFC's Fight Pass Invitationals do better numbers than the PFL. You know what I'm saying? So
I didn't even know that. That sucks for them.
Yeah. So like it's not even close. But you got to have these Apex cards, man, because some people they would not get fights. I mean, they don't. You can't put it like this card, even this weekend, while we said it's some decent fights on there. Could you imagine like if this card popped up in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Like people wouldn't go to this. They'd be like, yeah, no one's going to this.
No one's going to that.
Yeah. So,
and we still have top 15 matchup.
Yeah.
And it's how I look at it too. It's like college football, we'll watch it. Oh, 2 top 15 team shit. Like,
yeah, I'll watch it. You know what I'm saying?
That's how people.
I mean, It's not the Final Four, but I watched it.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that you know what? You just made me think of something. Maybe the UFC's purposely. This is a tough time in sports right now because you got MLB coming back, you got college basketball playoffs. Maybe the UFC is putting these thrown together cards now, so they could put their bigger cards when there's less competition as far as ratings and viewership.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, they're very strategic about the way they do cards, but in the summer when all the major sports are obsolete, that's when the UFC really strikes hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's why International Fight Week is a big card and everything around that. I can't remember all the dates of the fights this summer, but trust me, man, when basketball's done and there's that stretch in the summer where there's nothing really going on, you're going to see a lot of big fights and or announcements.
Yeah, because like baseball's on, but that's during the day. You know, that's the baseball games are over by the time the UFC's starting, mostly.
Yeah.
So there is something else I wanted to talk about. I'm pumped. Kyoji's getting back in the UFC.
Dude, yeah, man. How about that, right?
I'm pumped. I talked to him a little bit. He's staying at 125. He's not looking to bounce or go up to 135. He's pumped, and I think that the weight class kind of favors him right now. You know, I know, what was it, 8 years he's been out of the UFC. So, you know, he's 34. That's a lot of time for a fighter, but as you know, he's one of the most disciplined people in the whole world.
I was about to say, I would think Kyoji's okay.
Yeah.
At 34, that's not past the cutoff point for me in terms of age at that weight class. In fact, 34 is probably his peak for a year or two.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably going to do his best work in the next year or two. So hopefully when he gets his first fight in the UFC, I mean, they're going to match him up tough, but as long as he doesn't, take too much punishment in the first fight back, I can see him moving up fast, man.
I do. Actually, I feel like him and Marino are on a collision course.
Yeah.
I know because both of them want to fight for the belt, obviously, but I don't think that I'm a fan of Marino, but overall, do they really want to see another Marino title fight against Pantoja? And the Pantoja versus Kyoji, I mean, although it's not as big of a deal anymore, but it's teammate versus teammate. It kind of adds to that. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of fun matchups to make with him in that weight class. It adds a lot to the flyweight division. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Timing is everything. Remember, like when they got rid of him, they were getting rid of the division. Now the division is going to be hot again. I think that with Brandon Moreno doing his thing, Manel Kopp being a up-and-coming star, Pantoja speaks for itself. And then they did this season of Tough with Cormier and Chael Sonnen with flyweights. So I think they're reinvesting a lot back into flyweights. And rumor has it that even Sergio Pettis wants to come back. So,
oh, wow.
So I think that they're really going to and I don't know if Sergio's going to fight at flyweight or bantamweight, but I'm assuming they would probably say, we'll let you back in, but come back at flyweight.
I saw that Ryan Bader mentioned it might be nice to come back. I think of all the names, I think he's probably on the back of my list who I care to see. I mean, maybe the division could use somebody, but
there's no way they resign him.
Yeah, I'm not interested.
I couldn't imagine them being let's resign a 40-year-old who got knocked out in his last fight.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not resigning him.
Heavyweight division's not like him versus Tai Tuivasa. Like what do you?
Well, that's the point, right? Like it's not like he's leaving with this reputation of Fedor. Like it's not like he left PFL with this reputation of Fedor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could use UFC obviously needs challengers at heavyweight, but not more journeymen.
Yeah, he's. I don't see him being a challenger. Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In fact, I think he knows it. I think he was just kind of wishfully thinking because even on the back end of his of his spiel, he was talking about doing a fight with Daniel Cormier, and that's not happening.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing to say. Like, you know, it's never going to come. Like,
so that's not. So that kind of like just the fact that he said that. Just the fact that he said that means to me that he wasn't fully believing what he was saying about getting back to the UFC. I mean, I think maybe he was just saying it would be nice to, and it would be nice too, but I don't ever see that happening.
Yeah, maybe that's just, well, given him, he's a heavyweight. It's like, where else is he going to go right now? ONE FC? Like, he's got really no other. I mean, unless PFL ramps him up and gets him to fight Francis or something, or I don't even know. Who knows what the hell PFL's doing?
But that's crazy, right? When you think about these guys who went to the PFL, they're trying to leave, but where do they go? You know what I'm saying? Like, where are they going to go and make a good living? I don't even know.
They're gonna have to GFL. They're gonna have to find somebody that has the money to start a fight promotion around them. I guess, you know, that's the only thing I could think of. You know, I'm like ONE FC, especially for the bigger guys, doesn't really do it. What else is out there?
Not much. And I blame, man. I think there was a time where there was so much hate on the UFC by like old disgruntled fighters. So, I mean, obviously, like with the lawsuit, and then during that time period where they were trying to figure it out, there was so much hate on the UFC, and it had these fighters going, man, I'm leaving the UFC. They don't treat us right. Let's go test free agency. And that's when we saw this exodus of guys signing with Bellator and the PFL, and they were like disgruntled based on the reputation of more old and disgruntled fighters. And now they're realizing it, man, that it wasn't greener on the other side.
Yep. That's starting to that's what happens. It seems like whenever, like, it's like the devil, you know, almost, right? Like, but like everyone compared Bellator to WCW and WCW versus WWF, and all these old wrestlers went over there to make some money because they had Ted Turner backing. It's like Bellator had Viacom, but had nothing that they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to recycle the fighters. I think that they had the Grand Prix tournaments, and you know, Scott Coker's smart. He's look at these tournaments with all these possible matchups. People ended up pulling out, getting hurt. You know, the Tito Ortiz, but that was the best they had, and you can't recycle these recycled fighters again, especially back in the UFC. Like, and where are they going to go? We'll see.
I don't know. Well, I know where we're going to go. We're going to get up out of here, homie. So let's chop it up, man. Thank you to Marquel Mederos for joining the show. And if you enjoyed the show, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment. Do what you got to do. Let us know what you think. And on that note, this court is adjourned.